Hi guys, welcome to our daily encounter. In Judges chapter 11, we read about a very tragic story. This is where we read about Jephthah, who made a very ill-advised vow to the Lord. Here he was going up against the sons of Ammon, and he vowed to the Lord that if the Lord would help him win against the sons of Ammon, that he would offer up as a burnt offering the first thing that came out to greet him when he goes home. And lo and behold, when he goes home, it's not a goat, it's not a cow, but his very own precious daughter that comes out to greet him. And he is just torn to pieces about it in anguish. And he tells his daughter, he says, "Alas, my daughter, you have brought me very low, and you are among those who trouble me, for I have given my word to the Lord, and I cannot take it back." He had made the vow, and he realized that he must keep this vow, even though it was such a vow that would cause such tragedy and such heartbreak. And oftentimes that's the focus of the story whenever we come to this portion of the book of Judges. And we focus on, a lot of times, Jephthah's tragic vow. But I think we can find a lot of inspiration in the story. As tragic as it is, we can find a lot of inspiration in the story by focusing on Jephthah's daughter and her response to the situation. And she becomes really a inspiration for those who must face an unwanted fate. This is how she responds to what her dad says in verse 36. "So she said to him, 'My father, you have given your word to the Lord. Do to me as you have said, since the Lord has avenged you of your enemies, the sons of Ammon.'" Wow. What an inspiration she is. Here, her father had made this really rash vow, and yet he made that vow to the Lord, and she accepts the fact that he had made that vow, and she's even willing to allow him to fulfill the vow, even though it would mean her being offered up as a burnt offering. This is very similar to what we find with Jesus Christ. You know, God himself had made a vow, an oath to the human race, that he would send his own son to die on the cross so that we could all be saved. And Jesus fulfilled that vow. He willingly offered himself up as a sacrifice, much like what Jephthah's daughter is doing here based on her father's vow. And so she becomes really somewhat of a foreshadow of what Christ would do later, but also an inspiration for anyone who is coming up against an unwanted fate, an undesirable fate. Whatever that fate might be, it may not be something as extreme as death, but it might be some type of maybe job change or some move that we have to make. Maybe something that happens in our lives that is tragic that we would prefer not to happen. Jephthah's daughter becomes an inspiration of how a person can embrace that and move forward. The one thing that she does ask is that she would go into the mountains and be able to mourn over her virginity for 2 months with her companions. And then she comes down after that is done in verse 39, and it says, "At the end of 2 months, she returned to her father, who did to her according to the vow which he had made, and she had no relations with a man." So instead of going into the mountains and running away, she goes into the mountains for 2 months. She comes down like she promised, and she allows Jephthah to fulfill his vow. And hopefully we can be inspired in that, because there's oftentimes situations where we have to face these various circumstances that are tough, that are difficult, that are challenging. Can we embrace those things as Jephthah's daughter did? Not that we don't try to change our circumstances when we can, but whenever those things come into our lives that we feel, this is something that I have to go through, are we willing to have that sacrificial heart to say, "Lord, if you brought me to this, you're going to bring me through it. And if this is something that I have to face in my life, I give myself as a living sacrifice to you, God, my Father. And I'm willing to go through it, Lord. If in going through it, I can bring you glory, if I can fulfill your plan, your purpose for my life, I will go through it." To be able to have the heart of Jephthah's daughter day after day in our lives, I think would help us perhaps alleviate some of the anxiety and the fear that we have when we try to control our lives a little too much. when we can have this attitude of surrender to the Lord, surrender to our God, our Father in heaven, and be able to embrace the things that he brings into our life. Jephthah's daughter is a great inspiration for that, and hopefully we'll get some of that inspiration as we do our reading today. So here's some things we can reflect on and think about as we do our reading today. With that, guys, I do thank you for watching the video today. Hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.